Electric cars, they cost too much money, right? Especially ones with a premium badge on the nose. Well, prepare to be shocked because this car could change all that.
It's the Volvo EX30, and this is the Swedish brand's new small electric SUV. And on the surface at least, it's a high quality EV with a decent electric range and has a low starting price of just under £34,000. The EX30 could be the EV Brits have been waiting for, and that's before I tell you there's an even cheaper model costing £32,000 on the way later on.
Now, I know, before you start shouting at me, £32,000 is still an awful lot of money. But as I film this in November 2023, you'd be doing a good job to find a premium, spacious, good-looking EV for less than £40,000. This car, with all of its space and attractive design, and of course its premium badge on the nose, starts at around MG4 money. That's why there's so much fuss around the EX30.
And the EX30 really is attractive. The design takes those classic Volvo design cues of the Thor's hammer headlights, strong shoulder line and tall rear lights and neatly updates them. In some ways it makes the XC40 look a little dated. There's no need for a grille as it's an EV, but unlike some car makers which give their electric cars a bland looking appearance, Volvo has succeeded in giving its car an identity. The design is topped off with some chunky rear arches, squat roofline, and the rear lights are split with the upper units appearing to integrate into the rear screen. It's a simple but really good looking piece of design.
It's in here though where things get really impressive. Now, Volvo has been building great interiors for a while now. It all started with the second generation XC90 nearly a decade ago, and here Volvo has just improved the formula. I mean, just look at how much space you've got. Now, Volvo has been very clever here. So there are no speakers in the doors, for example. There's just one great big sound bar on the top of the dashboard, and that has liberated so much space in the doors. It's not just the doors where there's loads of storage space. Down here there's loads of little cubbies and places to store stuff and charge stuff, and it's just a really clever use of space and light. There are a couple of things that I don't like, and you would expect that. I mean, nothing is perfect, is it? The things that sort of niggle away at me are the electric window switches, for example. You'd expect to find them on the doors, wouldn't you? Because it would seem as though Volvo has taken inspiration from Volkswagen, because the switches are here on the centre console. That's not too much of a problem, but what is a problem is the fact there's only one switch to operate the left window and one switch to operate the right window. If you want to wind down the back windows, you have to press a little button that says rear, and then you can operate them. So they've taken away two buttons and replaced them with one button. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, and it's just little things like that that niggle for me. Another thing is the trim. Now, in the X30 you can choose from a multitude of different trims. This one I'm not a fan of, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, Volvo says it's supposed to look like a granite from a southern Swedish town, and it's very good for the environment because it's bits of chopped up UPVC windows. But to me, it just looks like the kind of floor that you find in a hospital. And then there's the touchscreen. Now, this works very well, and it's beautifully designed, isn't it? But that, there, we're in park at the moment, but when you're driving, that is where your speedo is. And I don't know about you, but when I'm driving, I don't want to look over there to see my speed. I want to be able to see it in front of me. Now, Volvo say the reason why they've put the speedo there is because they've got that sound bar, but why not put up a head-up display? It's just little things, but they really do annoy me.
Despite my grumbles, the feeling of light and airiness is great thanks to the glass roof on top-spec cars, and the design is superb, especially the little details like the real metal door handles, the dainty little air vents, and the armrests that appear to float in mid-air. Some more room in the back seats would be nice though, but the boot is of a decent size. There's even this handy drawing to show you what you can fit in the EX30. There's also a small trunk to store the car's charging cables too. There are three versions of the EX30 you can buy: 51 kilowatt hours and 69 kilowatt hours. Now the entry-level single motor car sends power to the back wheels, and that gets that smaller battery. The range of that is around 214 miles. Then there's an extended range model which has the same power, but it's got a longer range due to the larger battery. And then there's the range topper, the twin motor, the performance version that has 422 horsepower, and it means it's the quickest accelerating Volvo ever. Now, over the last 2 days, I have driven both the single motor extended range and the twin motor performance, and I have to say there is a huge difference between them. Now, the twin motor, that was the car I drove first, and I have to say I was a little bit disappointed. Perhaps my expectations were just set a little bit too high. And also, these cars that I've been driving are pre-production cars, so perhaps there's still a little bit of fettling that's needed. But despite all of that, I was still disappointed. I felt there was too much power. It felt as though the chassis couldn't really handle all of that power being sent to both axles. The steering felt massively disconnected, and the whole car just didn't feel, well, it felt jerky and not particularly smooth, and it didn't feel like a Volvo. Now this car is the single motor extended range, and I have to say this is far more what I was expecting. It feels as though this car is just better kind of connected. Now that's a weird thing to say about an electric car, I know, because electric power steering, especially these new wave of electric cars, sort of the connection you have between you sitting in the seat and what's actually happening to the car on the road is always going to be a little bit disconnected. But this extended range single motor, I thought was absolutely fine. The steering is nice and progressive. You turn it into a corner, it seems to go where you want it to. The ride on this car, also, we've got 19-inch wheels. You get 20s on the twin motor. The ride is absolutely fine, and it's usefully quick. It sort of gets up and sort of glides along very well. It's actually a really nice, refined, comfortable car. We need to talk about range though. The entry-level single motor uses an LFP battery, which is less resource intensive and is less degrading over time. It's cheaper overall, but that also means the driving range is limited. Volvo claims 214 miles, which will likely be well under 200 in normal driving and even lower in colder conditions. Then there's the NMC battery, which is of the type used in many electric cars and uses precious metals. It's more expensive, but it unlocks more range. You get up to 298 miles in the single motor extended range, while the twin motor travels a little less at 286. The extended and twin motor models get a heat pump as standard, while the charging capabilities are 135 kilowatts for the single motor and 154 kilowatts for the extended and twin motor cars. Now, it's not all good news, I'm afraid. There are a few things that get a little bit on my nerves. Firstly, it's the steering. Now, you can dive into the touchscreen, you can turn off the lane keep assist, but even when you do that, I still find this car is nibbling away at the steering, just little vibrations here and there. And it's just annoying. When you turn something off, you want it off, don't you? And speaking of which, you can turn the speed warning off as well. But that seems to make no difference whatsoever. This car is constantly binging, ponging, making weird noises. You can drive the car just using your right foot. It's just constantly annoying you, basically, and I don't know, it's just distracting, isn't it? And talking of distractions, I know I've already said it, but it really does annoy me. This Speedo, I don't want the Speedo there. It's too small and too far out of my eye line. I wanted it in front of me. Now, I know Volvo want to have a nice, clean and uncluttered dashboard, and they don't want a set of dials in front of you. Fair enough, but at least give us a head-up display.
My last niggle is the brake pedal. Now, like a lot of electric cars these days, there is one pedal driving, so that whacks the brake regeneration up, and it's particularly useful in cities. As soon as you take your foot off the throttle, the brakes are applied and you can drive the car just using your right foot. However, in the EX30, when you do that, I find the brakes are just too grabby. So when you're driving around the city, you take your foot off the throttle and all of a sudden you come to a very, very abrupt stop. Brands like Nissan and BMW just do this kind of thing a lot better.
The EX30 can be ordered right now and deliveries will commence in early 2024. As for prices, the EX30 starts at £33,795 for the single motor in Plus trim, which makes it very competitive. For comparison, the cheapest Vauxhall Mokka Electric is some £5,000 dearer. And there's the promise of an even cheaper core model, coming in at around £32,000. Most will opt for the extended range though, which starts at £38,545, which means the EX30 isn't quite the bargain you might initially be led to believe. So is the new EX30 the new benchmark EV? Well, I think it could be, you know. While that low headline price is for a version that most buyers will likely find too compromised in terms of range, the EX30 is still a very desirable small electric SUV that makes many EVs from supposedly more value for money brands look unnecessarily overpriced. Factor in stylish good looks, a very comfortable and tasteful interior, and the cachet of that Volvo badge, and you're left in no doubt that the EX30 will be a hugely popular car on British roads.